Alright, the last topic that we need to cover in this section is something that we've already done this year, so this should be a review, and it's rationalizing the denominator. We've even talked about it a little bit in the last section. To rationalize the denominator, just to review, is to get rid of any irrational numbers that are in the denominator. We don't like to have radical signs in the denominator of a fraction. So that means we have to go through the process of rationalizing the denominator. In order to do that, if we're dealing with a binomial radical expression, we must multiply by the conjugate of that radical expression. The conjugate is simply the same two terms, so in this case it's going to be the square root of 3 and the square root of 5, but instead of subtracting those two, the conjugate would add them. And then of course we can't change the overall value of our original expression, so we're going to have to multiply our numerator by the square root of 3 plus the square root of 5. So let's get going so we can simplify this thing. We need to multiply our two numerators together, so that means we're going to be distributing 2 square root of 7 to the square root of 3 and the square root of 5. So 2 times the square, or 2 square root of 7 times the square root of 3 will be 2 times the square root of 21 plus 2 times the square root of 35. So that takes care of our numerator. Now we need to multiply our two denominators together. And just like we looked at in the last video, here we are multiplying two binomial radical expressions. That means we have to FOIL. So we multiply our first two terms together. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. This outside terms, when we multiply them together, that's the square root of 3 times the square root of 5, so that's the square root of 15. When we multiply the inside terms together, we are going to be subtracting the square root of 15. And then when we multiply our last two terms together, we've got negative square root of 5 times positive square root of 5. So we're going to end up subtracting our result. The square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is 5. So now we've done all of the multiplication, we just need to simplify. Let's look at the numerator first. 21 does not have any perfect square factors, so that can't be simplified. It's just going to have to stay as 2 times the square root of 21. Same with 35, no perfect square factors there, so that's just going to have to stay as the square root of 35. If you wanted to factor out that 2, we might be doing that at the end of this, we will see. But right now, the numerator's as good as it's going to get for the moment. Let's take a look at the denominator. Because we multiplied by the conjugate of the square root of 3 minus the square root of 5, notice that these two middle terms are going to cancel out, and that's intentional. That's what it means, or that's why we multiply by the conjugate, so that we can rationalize the denominator and we get rid of all those radical expressions. If you don't get rid of those two middle terms when you multiply by the conjugate, that means you've done something incorrect. So now we're left with 3 minus 5, which is, of course, negative 2. So yes, my original prediction was correct. We can simplify this a little bit more. Let's factor out a 2 from our numerator. So we'll end up with 2 times the square root of 21 plus the square root of 35. We're going to divide that by negative 2. Of course, those 2's will cancel, which means that we end up dividing by negative 1, which we don't really want to leave down there. So our final result is going to be negative square root of 21 minus the square root of 35. And there's our simplified result.